Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive with English Listen and Learn. I'm Ben, and with me, as always, is Anna. We're tackling a topic today that I think will resonate with a lot of you out there. It's about how to stop being lazy and start taking action. Now, we're all guilty of it sometimes, right? Like putting things off or just feeling stuck in that comfort trap. But the good news is we're going to dig into some seriously fascinating insights about why we get stuck and, more importantly, how to break free.
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting things about laziness is that it's not actually the problem itself. It's more like this ancient survival mechanism that's gotten a bit lost in translation in today's world.
Okay, so you're telling me that my tendency to hit snooze like 5 times every morning is actually hardwired into my biology.
You got it. Our brains are wired to conserve energy, which was super important for our ancestors who, needed to be efficient with their resources. Wasting energy back then could be the difference between life or death, but these days, with food being plentiful and saber-toothed tigers not exactly roaming the streets, that same instinct can actually work against us.
So basically, our ancestors were just trying to survive, and now we're kind of dealing with the consequences. I mean, that's pretty mind-blowing to think about, but how does this ancient wiring actually play out in our daily lives?
Well, it shows up in our tendency to choose pleasure over pain.
Oh, yeah.
Even if that pain is really just a little bit of effort or discomfort, your brain is always looking for the easy route.
For sure.
It steers you towards what feels good in the moment, which often means avoiding anything that might be challenging.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like my brain has this built-in procrastination button for anything that involves leaving the couch.
Exactly. And that's exactly how this ancient wiring can really backfire on us in the modern world. Your brain doesn't necessarily distinguish between running from a predator or facing a deadline at work.
Right.
It just wants to conserve energy and seek pleasure. And this can lead to putting off those important tasks or goals.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But is there more to it than just our primal instincts?
Oh, absolutely. Beyond that primal urge, there's another big factor at play. Fear.
Fear.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about like fear of actual danger, but fear of failure, of judgment, of just not being good enough.
Fear of failure, that's a big one for me. I know it holds me back a lot.
Yeah, and it's interesting because fear is a natural human emotion, but it doesn't have to control our choices, right? Think about J.K. Rowling. She was rejected by like 12 publishers before finding a home for Harry Potter.
Wow.
Can you imagine the fear she must have felt every single time she was rejected?
It's amazing to think about how many incredible stories, inventions, or achievements we might miss out on if people just let that fear hold them back.
Absolutely.
But, sometimes I feel like I just need to wait for the perfect moment, that right inspiration, before I tackle a big goal.
Ah, the classic waiting for motivation trap. But here's the thing. Motivation isn't something you passively wait for. It's something you actually create through action. Yeah, it's like waiting for the wind to push your sailboat forward instead of just picking up the oars and rowing yourself.
So you're saying that even taking a tiny step can actually spark motivation?
Exactly. Once you start moving, even if it's just a small step, you build momentum, and that feeling of progress is what fuels further action, further motivation. It becomes this positive feedback loop.
Okay, I never thought about it like that.
But let's kind of flip the script for a moment and talk about what happens if we stay stuck in that comfort trap. What happens when we let those moments of inertia just win?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's easy to just focus on the immediate comfort, but what are we actually sacrificing in the long run?
Well, the price of inaction is a lot higher than just missing a deadline or leaving a project unfinished. It's about the missed opportunities, the weight of regret, the erosion of our self-trust.
Yeah, it makes you think about what we might be saying no to just because we're choosing comfort over courage. I mean, I remember a story about Jim Carrey's father. He always wanted to be a comedian, but he chose a safe job instead. And, when he was later let go from that job, he was just filled with regret for not pursuing his passion.
And it highlights that sometimes playing it safe is actually the riskiest move of all.
Right.
Because inaction has consequences. And beyond those missed opportunities, there's the heavy weight of regret. Studies show that people actually regret what they didn't do more than the things they did, even if those actions led to mistakes.
Yeah, that's a sobering thought.
It is.
It reminds me of Michael Jordan being cut from his high school basketball team.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine if he had just let that rejection define him. Instead, he used it as fuel and became arguably, the greatest basketball player of all time.
Talk about turning a setback into a springboard for success
That's what I was
for
saying.
and it highlights the power of resilience and how we can actually reframe challenges as opportunities for growth.
I love that.
But let's be honest. Every time we choose the easy path, it can chip away at our self-belief.
Yeah. It's like each time we give in to that urge to stay in our comfort zone, we're kind of reinforcing this belief that we're not capable, disciplined, or worthy of achieving our goals.
You hit the nail on the head.
Oh, no.
But here's the good news. Laziness isn't a life sentence. It's a habit, and habits can be broken. There are actual, tangible strategies we can use to rewire our brains and take charge of our lives.
Okay, that's what I like to hear. So what's the first step on that path?
Well, the first step, and often the most difficult one, is simply starting. Overcoming the inertia of inaction is incredibly powerful, and that's where the 2-minute rule comes into play.
The 2-minute rule?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, it's a simple but surprisingly effective strategy. Basically, if a task takes less than 2 minutes to complete, do it immediately.
Okay. That sounds almost too easy. How can something so small make a real difference?
The magic really lies in breaking down those mental barriers that we create around tasks.
Okay.
By starting small, we kind of bypass our brain's tendency to overcomplicate things, and we build momentum in the process.
So instead of saying, I need to clean the entire house, I could start with, I'm going to clear off this one counter for 2 minutes.
Exactly. Or instead of saying, I need to write a 10-page report, you could say, I'm going to just brainstorm ideas for 2 minutes. The key is to take action, even if it's tiny.
Okay.
Just to break through that initial resistance.
I'm starting to see how that could work, like tricking our brains into getting started.
Exactly. And once you're moving, it's so much easier to keep going. But we all know getting started is only half the battle, right?
Right.
So how do we maintain that momentum and make sure we don't slip back into old habits?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to get all excited at first, but how do we make these changes last?
Well, that's where deadlines can be really helpful. They add a sense of urgency, and they can be incredibly motivating.
Deadlines, don't those usually just bring on stress and pressure?
They can, but they can also be incredibly effective in pushing us to take action. Elon Musk once said, if you give yourself 30 days to clean your house, it will take 30 days. But if you give yourself 3 hours, it will take 3 hours.
Wow.
Right.
And
It speaks volumes about how constraints can really drive focus and efficiency.
okay, I'm starting to see the benefit of deadlines. When we have a limited time frame, we're less likely to procrastinate. It forces us to prioritize. But how can we apply this to our own lives?
Yeah.
I mean, do we need to create artificial deadlines for everything?
It's more about setting specific and realistic deadlines, even for personal goals. So instead of saying, I'll start my business someday, you could say, I'll write my business plan by Friday.
Okay, so even if it's not an external deadline, creating that internal sense of urgency can make a difference.
Exactly. And speaking of accountability, that brings us to another powerful strategy. Sharing your goals with others.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about internal motivation, it's about bringing other people into the equation.
Absolutely. Think about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He doesn't just set fitness goals for himself, he shares them with millions of people on social media. Why?
Yeah.
Because accountability works. When we make our goals public, we're more likely to follow through.
It's like having a whole cheering section motivating you along the way.
Exactly.
But do we need to become social media influencers to see results?
No, not at all. It could be as simple as sharing your goal with a trusted friend, family member, a mentor, or even just a group of friends with similar goals.
Yeah.
The key is just having someone who will support you and gently hold you accountable.
That's a great tip. But even with all the support in the world, sometimes we still battle with self-doubt.
You're right.
So how do we overcome that?
Well, that's where the power of reframing our identity comes into play.
Reframing our identity. What does that actually look like?
It's about shifting our self-perception. Think about Kobe Bryant. He didn't just try to be great, he embodied this Black Mamba persona. He saw himself as the hardest worker, period.
Okay, so it's about more than just positive thinking. It's about actually embodying the qualities we want to cultivate.
Exactly. It's about aligning our actions with our desired identity.
I love that idea. But how do we actually make that shift? It sounds a bit abstract.
It starts with changing our self-talk.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I need to be more productive, say, I am a productive person.
Agree.
And then back it up with action.
Yeah.
Even small wins contribute to building evidence for this new identity.
So it's like creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, but in a positive way.
Exactly. The more we act in alignment with our desired identity, the more we reinforce those beliefs about ourselves.
I like that.
But let's be real. Our environment plays a huge role in our success, or lack thereof.
That's so true.
If we're trying to focus in a cluttered workspace with our phones constantly buzzing,
It's no wonder we struggle to stay on track.
you're so right. Our surroundings can really impact our behavior, so what can we do about that?
Well, it starts with creating a dedicated workspace that's free from distractions.
Okay.
This could be a separate room, a designated corner, or even just a specific table at your favorite coffee shop. The key is to have a space that signals to your brain it's time to work.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So having a designated workspace can really help shift our mindset. What other tips do you have?
Well, technology can be both a blessing and a curse, right? So consider using website blockers or app timers to limit those distractions.
Yeah, it's amazing how we can actually use technology to combat the distractions that it often creates. Any other advice on creating that ideal workspace?
Surround yourself with visual reminders of your goals. This could be a vision board, motivational quotes, or even pictures of people who inspire you. These visual cues can be powerful motivators. It's like creating a mini inspiration gallery to keep you focused. But, even with all the right tools and strategies, sometimes we get bogged down by perfectionism.
Oh, perfectionism's a big one.
Yeah, it's like that fear of not being good enough.
Yeah.
It paralyzes us before we even start.
You've hit on a major point. Perfectionism is the enemy of progress.
Okay.
It's a sneaky form of procrastination that keeps us stuck in a cycle of planning and refining without ever taking action.
So how do we escape this perfectionism trap? How do we just, embrace imperfection?
The key is to shift our mindset from perfect to done. Adopt the mantra. Imperfect action beats perfect inaction. It's about focusing on progress over perfection.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So instead of aiming for flawlessness, we should be aiming for progress.
Exactly. And remember, you can always refine and improve later. The first step is getting started.
Okay, that takes a huge weight off. But how do we actually, practically apply this done is better than perfect mentality?
Start by setting a good enough standard for your first draft, your first attempt, your first step. Don't get bogged down in the details. Just focus on getting it done.
Right.
Yeah, you can always come back and refine later.
That makes sense.
It's like giving yourself permission to create without the pressure of perfection.
Okay. But then how do we celebrate progress without falling back into that perfectionism trap?
Focus on how far you've come rather than how far you have to go. Acknowledge and celebrate every small win along the way.
So it's about appreciating the journey
Yeah.
and recognizing that progress, no matter how small, is still progress.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from the destination to the journey,
Okay.
from the outcome to the process. By celebrating those small wins, we create this positive reinforcement that fuels our motivation and keeps us moving forward.
That's great advice.
Yeah. It's important to remember that becoming the best version of ourselves looks different for everyone. There's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to, breaking free from these patterns.
Right. That's a great point. I mean, we've talked about all these different strategies, but it ultimately comes down to finding what works best for each individual and their own goals.
Exactly. It's about experimenting and adapting and personalizing these strategies to fit your unique needs and circumstances. What works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
And that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, it's not about following a rigid set of rules or anything.
Okay.
It's about creating your own personalized toolkit for success.
Exactly. It's about empowering yourself to take control of your habits and behaviors
Yeah.
and create a life that aligns with your values and aspirations.
And that brings us to another important aspect of this journey, motivation.
Yeah.
We've talked about how to create motivation through action, but how do we actually sustain that motivation over time? How do we prevent those inevitable dips in enthusiasm?
That's where connecting to your why becomes really crucial. Why are you pursuing this goal? What's the deeper meaning behind it? Because when we have a strong connection to our purpose, it fuels our motivation and it helps us persevere through challenges.
So it's not just about setting a goal. It's about understanding the deeper motivation behind it.
Exactly.
It's about tapping into that intrinsic drive that keeps us going even when things get tough.
Absolutely. It's about finding that emotional connection to your goal,
Yeah.
the spark that ignites your passion and fuels your determination. When you have a clear sense of purpose, it's so much easier to stay motivated, even when you face obstacles along the way.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like having a North Star guiding you on your journey. But let's be real for a moment. Sometimes life just throws us curveballs.
Oh, yeah.
We get sick, we face unexpected challenges, or maybe we just, lose steam. What happens when we fall off track? How do we get back on the wagon without feeling discouraged?
Well, that's where self-compassion comes in again. It's crucial to remember that setbacks are a natural part of the process. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
We're all going to stumble from time to time.
So it's not about avoiding setbacks altogether. It's more about how we respond to them. It's
Mhm.
about reframing those failures as opportunities for learning and growth.
Exactly. Instead of beating yourself up when you slip up, try to approach it with curiosity. What can you learn from this? How can you adjust your approach moving forward? Every setback is just an opportunity for a comeback.
I love that perspective.
Mhm.
It's about shifting our mindset from self-criticism to self-compassion,
Yeah,
from viewing setbacks as failures to seeing them as valuable lessons.
absolutely. And by embracing this growth mindset, we actually become more resilient and better equipped to handle those challenges that life inevitably throws our way. It's not about being perfect, it's about being persistent. It's
Yeah.
about getting back up after every fall and just continuing to move forward one step at a time.
That's inspiring. But what about when we actually achieve a goal? How do we celebrate those victories without losing momentum?
Well, celebrating wins is crucial. It reinforces positive behaviors and helps us stay motivated. But it's also important to strike a balance between celebrating and staying hungry for more.
So it's about acknowledging our accomplishments without becoming complacent.
Exactly.
How do we find that sweet spot?
Take some time to savor your achievements, reflect on the journey, acknowledge the effort you put in, and just allow yourself to feel proud.
Right.
But then set your sights on the next challenge.
So it's about celebrating the win, but not losing sight of the bigger picture.
Right.
It's about using that momentum to keep us moving forward, toward our next goal.
Precisely. It's about creating a cycle of continuous improvement. We set goals, we work towards them, we celebrate, and then we set new goals, always striving to become better versions of ourselves.
I like that. It's a reminder that growth is an ongoing process. It's not a destination.
Exactly. It's a journey of constant learning, evolving, and just expanding our potential.
This conversation has been so insightful. We've explored the science behind laziness, debunked some common myths, and uncovered some really powerful strategies for breaking free from that comfort trap. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the power of reframing our identity.
Yeah,
Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
of course. Reframing our identity is about shifting our self-perception from, someone who's lazy to someone who's capable, driven, and action-oriented. It's about changing the narrative we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of.
So it's about more than just changing our behavior. It's about changing our fundamental beliefs about ourselves.
Exactly. And our beliefs shape our actions. So if we believe that we're lazy, we're more likely to act in ways that confirm that belief. But if we start to believe that we're capable and action-oriented, well, then we're more likely to take actions that support those beliefs.
So it's like creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, but in a positive way.
Exactly. It's a powerful cycle that can lead to lasting change. And remember, it's not about pretending to be someone we're not. It's about stepping into the version of ourselves that we aspire to be.
I love that. It's about embracing our potential
Yeah,
and becoming like the architects of our own lives.
absolutely. It's
Mm.
about recognizing that we have the power to shape our own destiny, to break free from limiting beliefs, and to create a life that's both fulfilling and meaningful.
This has been such an empowering conversation. We've covered so much ground, from understanding the science of laziness to practical tips for breaking free from that comfort trap and embracing a more action-oriented mindset.
It has been great.
But before we say goodbye, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Please do.
It's a reminder that change is possible. No matter where you are in your journey, no matter how many times you've stumbled, it's never too late to start taking action toward the life you want to create.
I couldn't agree more. It's about embracing the power of choice, recognizing that every moment is an opportunity to make a different decision, to take a step in a new direction.
And with each step, with each choice we make, we move closer to becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Beautifully said. It's about embracing the journey, setbacks and all, and knowing that we have the power to create a life that is both fulfilling and aligned with our truest selves.
This has been such an inspiring conversation. I feel like we've given our listeners a whole toolbox of strategies to combat laziness and start taking action.
Yeah, we've explored everything from understanding the science behind procrastination to those practical tips for setting goals, building accountability, and creating an environment that supports success.
And we've emphasized the importance of self-compassion, remembering that it's okay to stumble along the way. It's about progress, not perfection.
Absolutely. We're all human and we're all on this journey together.
But before we say goodbye, I want to circle back to this idea of the comfort trap. We talked about how it can keep us stuck in this cycle of inaction, but how do we actually break free from its grip?
Breaking free from the comfort trap requires, a conscious decision to step outside of our comfort zone. It's about embracing discomfort as a catalyst for growth.
So it's not about avoiding discomfort altogether, it's about reframing it
Right.
as a necessary part of the process.
Exactly. It's about understanding that growth actually happens outside of our comfort zone. When we challenge ourselves, when we push beyond our perceived limits, we expand our capacity for achievement and fulfillment.
That makes perfect sense. It's like, building a muscle. We have to push ourselves beyond our current strength to see results.
Precisely. And just like with physical exercise, the more we push ourselves, the stronger we become. The comfort zone expands, and what once felt daunting becomes our new normal.
I love that analogy. So it's not about becoming fearless overnight. It's about just gradually expanding our comfort zone one step at a time.
Exactly. It's about taking small, consistent actions that challenge us in a manageable way. It could be something as simple as trying a new activity, or speaking up in a meeting, or setting a slightly more ambitious goal.
So it's about kind of embracing those butterflies in the stomach moments
Yeah,
as signals that we're on the right track.
absolutely. Those moments of discomfort are often indicators that we're stepping outside of our comfort zone and into the realm of growth.
This has been such an empowering conversation. I feel like we've given our listeners the tools and inspiration they need to break free from that comfort trap and start living a more fulfilling life.
I agree. It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
And to our listeners, remember, you have the power to choose action over comfort, courage over fear, and progress over perfection. What small step will you take today to break free from the comfort trap and move closer to your dreams? Thanks for joining us for another deep dive with English Listen and Learn.
The journey starts now.
Let's learn some new vocabularies together. Mind-blowing. It means extremely surprising or impressive. Example: the special effects in the movie were absolutely mind-blowing. Primal instinct. It means a deep, natural behavior that comes from basic survival needs. Example: when he heard the loud noise, his primal instinct made him run for safety. Moment of inertia. It means the resistance of an object to change its movement. Example: a spinning ice skater increases their speed by pulling their arms in, reducing their moment of inertia. Sobering. It means serious and making you think deeply. Example: the news about climate change was a sobering reminder of our responsibility. Momentum. It means the force that keeps something moving forward. Example: the team won their first 2 games and used that momentum to stay undefeated. Thanks for watching. Until next time.